raise your glass up high. Turn it up, it's time. Tall boy on the line. Loud breeze, they will last. Raise your glass up high.
Welcome back to episode 312 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, tonight it's flowing all the way to the US of A once more as we're joined by another guest. But before I introduce him, I need to say hello to the fella here to my left. Gazza, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Beans. Evening all, evening the world. I hope you are all well out there in listener land. And I'm looking forward to this. As Adam has said, we have another guest with us this evening. And, you know, it's a guest that is a first timer for us. Always fascinated by their stories and what they can bring to the podcast. So, yeah, I'm absolutely genuinely looking forward to this. So, just while Beans sort of sorts himself out, Kenneth, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Well, I'll tell you, it's a real pleasure to be on your show, and the fact that it's international with in the UK is just that's awesome for me. Awesome. Yeah. So you know, I'm here in California. I'm semi-retired, living in California, just outside Los Angeles. But I'm originally from the Big Apple in New York, and you know, grew up in New York City in a small place you probably never heard of called Brooklyn, and so you know, I started there, and you know, my dad was a cop. He was an NYPD cop, and he ended up serving for about 38 years. He had a storied career. You know, he starts out in the NYPD, I think, in 1953, and he retired in 1991. And our law enforcement careers overlapped by about 2 years. So, you know, I'm the oldest of 5 from Brooklyn, and, you know, that's where it all started.
Wow, fair play. And you, as well as your career and your father's career, you've also written a couple of books, and I have one of them here now. If you saw me reaching around,
yeah, that's right. That's the true crime. That's my true crime memoir, Cop's Son. Yeah, one G-man's fight against jihad, global fraud, and the cartels. Indeed.
Pretty impressive, isn't it?
It is. I was just looking just below camera here, and I was like reading it, sort of a cop's son and one G-man's fight against jihad, global fraud, and cartels. Wow, don't get much bigger than that, really, do you?
It doesn't, does it?
I'm out of breath just saying it. I'm out of breath.
Yeah, it's uncanny. So for our listeners in the UK, of which makes up about half of our listenership, did you want to tell us and explain exactly what the FBI is, what they deal with, etc.?
Yeah, and I think you know, maybe I should go back in time to when I was looking around. I'd actually been involved as an educator. I was a Spanish teacher in high school, and then from New York teaching Spanish. I also picked up some ESL credentials while I was there, and I got a job offer in Saudi Arabia. For a school with the royal family. So I spent 5 years there teaching English as a second language, kind of rubbing elbows with the princes, greater princes, lesser princes, on weekends at the palaces, and learning some Arabic and getting interested at the same time with terrorism. You know, I'd been in Saudi Arabia maybe 1 month, and the rebels took Mecca. And there was a bloody fight, hundreds killed. National Guard went in. And then at the same time, we had our hostages in Iran at the same time. So I thought, my God, I'm in a really, I'm in a society that's just exploding. And so I was curious, and I learned as much as I could about terrorism. And so when I came back to the States and went to graduate school, we had, and this was a school, it was a business school. It's called the American Graduate School for International Management, and it's called AKA Thunderbird. And it was a school in which the CIA and the FBI recruited heavily. They wanted people that had been overseas, that knew languages, things like that. So I was approached by both agencies, and the FBI kind of won out. I met a Mormon. It was a Mormon special agent, and he said, look, we could use someone like you. You're fluent in Spanish, you speak basic Arabic, and you have an idea of what's happening in the Middle East. And we think some excuse my language, shit is coming our way. So, so I was very interested, and I put in my application. I went in under the language program. You could go in at the time under various programs, and they had my class. My new agents class was made up of military, cops, people from other federal agencies, and then on top of that, people from all walks of life, teachers, you name it. So I went in that program, and I was an older new agent. I was 34 when I went in. The cutoff at the time was 35. Now it's been extended to 37. So I joined, I think it was like 40 classmates. And so, what the FBI does is it's, handles all types of criminal violations. Now, my particular area of expertise was the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the JTTF. But my next door neighbors here in the field office were foreign counterintelligence, and they would work on Russian spies or Chinese matters or whatever. But we had 3 floors in the building, and each floor had about 10 different squads. From fugitive squad to the fraud squad. You had the different mafia squads, different squads for different families, the 5 families in New York. So it was just amazing. You go up and down these floors and you see, different squads and everybody, working hard, really, really hitting it hard.
Oh, fair play.
It sounds incredible.
It does, doesn't it?
Like genuinely, and I think in this country we have a little bit of a fascination with the sort of the FBI, the CIA, because obviously a lot of it is we see obviously from sort of the mainstream media and TV shows and things like that. And I think there is a fascination with it, and obviously a lot of the time you see it sort of gets quite glorified on TV, but it does sound cool. And actually, when you're speaking to people like yourself, and we've had sort of cops on and stuff, and when they talk about what it's like in like everyday real life, it sounds incredible. And the good work that you're doing and all the agents are doing, just trying to keep everybody else safe is incredible. One question that really I wanted to ask you, and I was really excited when Adam obviously sort of booked you. I was like, oh, right, cool. I've got to ask about sort of the international terrorism bit, the 9/11, the jihadis, and when did that really first come to your awareness as such? And you said that you were told that there was, excuse my language, that there was shit coming your way, sort of thing. When did you actually think, oh my God, like the shit's here, sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I tell you, I actually realized it when I finished my contract in Saudi Arabia, and I was headed back to the States, and I decided to stop off and visit a few countries on the way back. The first country I visited was Egypt, and I wasn't the normal tourist in Cairo. I wasn't there to see the Egyptian Museum or go for a felucca ride on the Nile River. I told the taxi driver, take me to the stadium where Anwar Sadat was assassinated. And,
right.
and the poor taxi driver's like, huh? What? What? Hey, boy, you're not going to kill me, are you? No. So went out there, and the bullet holes was still there. You could put your finger in them, and it was spooky, eerie, just to look at this place and just say, hey, 4 years ago, the Islamic Jihad and this military parade, they stopped, and Sadat and all these dignitaries are there, and they're thinking it's some kind of a demonstration or, of their, I don't know, their SS troops or whatever they would be. And all of a sudden, Sadat stands up and he salutes these guys that are running at him with machine guns. Of course, they blow him away. They kill, I think, 10 other people. And that's when I thought, I'm looking out at this place and I'm thinking, Christ, this is coming our way. It's coming our way because I know that I'm familiar with Islamic Jihad, and there's this guy. He's called Abdul Rahman. He's the blind sheikh, and he's on his way to New York and New Jersey. So, we were on a collision course.
Wow.
I mean,
But-
it's scary. It is scary. I mean, Gaz mentioned 9/11 there. It's a day that literally the world stopped
Yeah.
and watched what was happening and watched history unfold in front of our eyes. And
It's
you
so
know,
sad.
we saw something that we hope we never see the like of again. But
Oh, yeah, heartbreaking.
like you say, it wasn't just that though, is it? There was a build up to it beforehand. That there was a
Absolutely.
history to it. And
There was a history to it. I'm glad you mentioned that because when I started in 1989, and it was interesting. You arrive on the scene to this field office, and I had my heart set on going to the New York office because that was kind of the flagship office. That's where all the big cases were, the spy cases, the terrorism cases. So you can imagine my disappointment, and I'm from New York, right? So you can imagine my disappointment when I get my assignment. And, they come in, they read it in front of the class. Strange, you're going to, and I'm thinking, oh, baby, New York, got it made, Anyway, so the guy says, Newark. And I thought, what? New York? Newark, New Jersey. And I thought, oh, Christ, this is terrible. Why did I join the FBI? I'm going to this place called Newark. But, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because had I gone to New York, I would have been one of thousands of new agents going into this place. I would have been just another number, and I probably would have been selected to do applicant work, where you take 6 months, you go out, you interview applicants for federal job positions, and you get experience interviewing people, talking to people. That's the normal route. But for some reason, when I got to Newark, someone had the foresight to say, look, this guy just came from the Middle East, Arabic, Spanish, we could use him, JTTF material. And if you read the book, you'll know that I did not get a very good welcome from my boss. In fact, he said, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. I wouldn't have you here, but I'm stuck with you. And I said, thanks. It's nice to meet you. But when I got on that squad, these were men and women that were moving it, shaking it. They were doing it. We had FBI agents. We had Cuban intelligence, people that work in Cuban intelligence also. New Jersey state troopers were part of the task force. We had a Secret Service agent. So, for me, it was the candy store of terrorism. You could work all these groups from Abu Nidal, Islamic Jihad, IRA. My first case was an IRA case, or I should say my first inquiry was an IRA case. But you could work JD, Jewish Defense League, Black Liberation Army, on and on and on. So for me, I was like, it was adrenaline. Adrenaline is pumping. When do I start work? When can I get out there? So you also had to bring your A game, and that was my introduction. Within maybe a month or so, you might remember that Rabbi Kahane was assassinated, was shot dead in New York City by a Palestinian guy named Said Nozer. And so, the next thing you know, we're doing a search warrant on his place in New Jersey, and we're taking away all these documents. And, little did we know that this was actually all leading up to 9/11. This was the beginning of Al-Qaeda in the United States, in New York. And most people at the time said, oh, these are just disgruntled Arabs. They've come back from Afghanistan. They're pissed off. They hate Jews. It's just a local Jewish thing. And so when he was assassinated, when Meir Kahane, the rabbi, was assassinated, NYPD stepped in and they said, no, not so quick. This is not terrorism. It's just a homicide. That's all. But when I started carting away these documents, and I saw some of the documents and I said, there's something going on here. There's stuff in there. And interesting, I remember seeing some literature from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that this guy had in his house. And I was like asking these other agents, the older agents, what is this? What's going on? That kid, just shut up and just, seal up the boxes and off they went. But and that would come back later, a few years later, kind of the same thing when I was looking at a homicide in Brooklyn. And I'd see these Fort Bragg papers again show up, and all of them came from this triple agent named Ali Mohammed.
Wow.
Frightening stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on this because I mean, I love the FBI, I love the CIA and everything around it, like I say, the mystique around it and stuff. But I'm fascinated with sort of almost where the tentacles reached, sort of before the culmination, which was obviously the 9/11 attack. It's all of these different moving parts, like a chess piece, and all of these different areas that you don't really associate with each other, and then. Right. I say, are you looking for the sort of, the smoking bullet as such? You're like, right, that's how they all connect, sort of thing. And I'm fascinated by it. And it's incredible just to hear you there to sort of pick up like little bits of intel to go, look, actually, you know what? There's something about this. There's something that doesn't quite sit with me. One question I have: Do all agents have? I say agents. Do all agents have the rank as such to sort of suggest things, or does it? I mean, I'm assuming it has to go through the hierarchy, and then the guys at the top will go, "Oh, yeah, there is something there."
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you could suggest it, and later on, when I found more of these documents, and that was 3 years later, I did, and I was headed out the door to another federal agency at the time. So when I found these incriminating documents, I went back to my squad. I turned it over to the agent that was replacing me, and I said, "You need to get this to our boss. This is unbelievable. There's something that is really bad here. I think there's someone down with the Green Beret that's up to no good. Something's going on, and we need to find out." And that was the last I heard of it. And then the next thing I know, you have. The World Trade bombing, the first World Trade bombing, right after that. So, but when I was there, when I was, the 3 years that I was on the JTTF, you're working on so many different groups and so many different things. Like we had the Gulf War, that whole lead up to the Gulf War where we were on alert, high alert. So, you're working your cases, and then Abdurrahman is in there stirring up the pot with his group, the people that would ultimately bomb the World Trade Center. So all of these things going on, and then you get this little petty shit that comes in. Oh look, the Sikhs are they just bombed an Indian airliner over the Atlantic out of over by Ireland, and so you have to take care of this lead. There are Sikhs in our neighborhood, and you go out there and you have to decide: are these terrorists or are these competing groups in the temple that are fighting each other for power? And you get sucked into that shit, and you have to be, you have to say no. I'm not going to, you have to quickly determine that I'm not going to waste my time on this. But maybe Abdul Rahman, we need to spend more time with him, less time on that. So that was so everything was very fluid.
Yeah. But having the insight, I suppose, the intel, the knowledge, the intuition, the sort of the spider sense, for want of a better phrase, that actually it's just not right. And is that, I suppose, is that something that you get taught? Was that something that would come sort of quite naturally to you in terms of having that forensic sort of depth of insight, I suppose?
I guess every agent comes to the job with kind of a different skill set. Now, and I'll be honest with you. My forte, I'm a people person, and I just love meeting people. I love listening to people, which I found out over the course of my career and afterwards. That's the whole thing. It's the 80-20 rule. You listen 80% of the time. You don't speak any more than 20%. So I love doing that. And of course, I had been living in Arab cultures for about 5 years. So when I joined the squad, and all of a sudden, part of your part of the job requirement is to go out and cultivate informants. And I was pretty good at that. And I was good at it because, again, I knew the culture, I knew the language. And, there's one case in the book where I think it was called the chapter's called the intersection of destiny and luck or something like that. But where everything from my past and everything I was doing right then, everything came together at one time. And that's a beautiful thing when it comes together. It's rare, but but on that occasion, things went great. But on other occasions, like the one where I'm looking at documents and saying, "Holy shit, what is this?" You
Yeah.
know, it didn't go so great.
Yeah.
So taking you back then to those early days prior to say dealing with the IRA, which our age growing up, when we thought about terrorism, we thought about the IRA,
Yeah.
didn't we?
Yeah.
That's what it was for us because we saw the impact on the British mainlands. Those are the stories that impacted us, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know that's what terrorism was. And then all of a sudden we come to face with this new world. How do you prepare for that? What was the training like to get you prepared from your career, working where you worked and learning the different languages? How do they mold you and shape you? You might not be able to share too much about it, but I'd be curious to know about your training experience.
Yeah, well, the training is brief, guys. I mean, it was 12 weeks in Quantico. I mean, it's wonderful training. Don't get me wrong, but you're taking you're learning how to basically to put together an investigation, how it from planning it to executing it to taking it to court, to successful prosecution and all that. That's basically So we're in legal, and then firearms, as you know, it's a huge component of the training. Then you have mock court things going on where people play the part of prosecutor and bad guy, and they even have a place, as you probably know, called Hogan's Alley, which was developed by somebody in Hollywood, where it's like a pseudo small city that's right there in our backyard, and where they have role players that will act different scenarios out, which I thought was incredibly cool. I just remember one of those was like a bar, motorcycle gang, and they were taking over a bar, and someone called us, and so we go in with our rubber guns, of course, and there are these role players that are really, and some of them get really into it, and some of them push back. So that was a lot of fun, and then of course. Interrupting the whole thing was Jodie Foster, who they decide to make the movie while I'm there, Silence of the Lambs, and the next thing you know, she's sitting next to me, and we're going out and running together, and I'm like, what the heck? I didn't join up.
Now that is cool. That's cool. That's very cool.
I didn't join Hollywood. I want to be in the FBI. I'm sitting next to her, and again, people person. So I'm asking her, Miss Foster, please. I know we're going out on a 10K. We're going out on a 10K run right now, but I know you're a little nervous, and she was, and I said, well, how about after this? Tonight we're all getting together at the boardroom. A boardroom was where you could have soda and suds. And then something to eat, and she just looked at me like with daggers in her eyes, like, no. Okay.
So what you're actually saying is you asked Jodie Foster out. That's what you're really saying, isn't it?
That's what I'm going to use now. It didn't work. She turned me down. Go ahead. Think about Hannibal Lecter. I don't care. But that was interesting. But the training was good for what it was. It was good. But I'll tell you where it was weak, and it was weak on international stuff that was coming our way. What I'm talking about. Very weak. They had an Abu Nidal expert that he would come in. I think he read the Wikipedia before he taught the class, and he didn't know anything. To be honest, I could have taught it. I mean, I should have taught it. I knew more about it than they did. But I can't blame them, because the FBI at that time, in '89, was still kind of this bank robbery mentality, and it wasn't ready for terrorism. It didn't realize what was heading to our shore.
Yeah,
our shores.
So, I mean, like Gaz mentioned it there. A lot of our idea from it comes from what we see on the big silver screen or on the small screen. How close is the counterterrorism stuff that you did to the likes of Jack Bauer on 24? I'm guessing not too similar.
not a lot.
No.
Everything moves at a glacial pace. None of this quick 45 minutes and everything is done. But yeah, I mean, there are some things that I know they have consultants, FBI consultants on some of these shows, but I think most of it is just theatrics and stuff. But there is some truth to what you see on it, and we had some interesting cases and some things that just happen all of a sudden, and the next thing you know, you're there. But what's interesting is, and I put this in my book, I made mistakes out there, and you just can't prepare sometimes for things. The supervisor is on vacation, and all of a sudden someone calls president or calls the Iraqi embassy and says, I can work with you guys. I can kill the president. And I'm ready to kill him, and I have a whole bunch of guys with me, and all of a sudden the squad is turned upside down, and the guy that's called it in, he's in Newark, and he's a Palestinian guy, and then we find out, and they send me in to do kind of a limited undercover because they didn't have anybody else, and I said, you know what, I think I can talk to this guy in his own language, and maybe okay, I'll go in there into his store as a graduate student from one of the local universities, and I'm studying Arabic. And so, that's the way I connected with this person. And, I found out a lot about him. And just the first 10 minutes that we talked, I said, oh, so you're a military vet of the United States, but you're born in Kuwait. You hate Kuwait. You're pro-Iraqi. And so it all started to make sense. And then, of course, I screwed it up at the end. He goes, oh, Mr. Ken, I think I called myself Richard. Oh, I must see you again. We must have tea and call whatever. And I said, yes, I'd like that very much, to see you again and to learn more about you and what you're up to. And so I wasn't really prepared for it. And of course, I had a fictitious name. But then as he goes, please, your phone number. And as I'm scribbling down the phone number, it's my real phone number. And I'm laying it out. I'm like, oh, shit. So I probably should have scratched it out and started over. But I didn't. And so, of course, when I went back to the squad area, everybody is like, what? I'm sitting around the table with these guys. And they said, what happened? What happened? And I said, well, here's all the information. And this is who he is, and this is where he lives, and he's a former military, so we have to really take this one seriously. And then anything else, yeah, guys, I think I screwed up, and what you doing? And I said, I gave the guy my real phone number, and boy, the squad supervisor at the time, he hit the ceiling, and he was just reaming me out in front of all these people. You son of a, you shouldn't have, you screwed up the whole operation. And boy, I felt like I was 2 inches tall. Wow. But we were able to get past that. And fortunately, the guy never picked up on it. He never called me. So, and I had to change my phone number. So, but things like that. It's all of it's very human stuff that goes on there. But I was always impressed by how much that the people around me, that the FBI agents around me were there to serve. They were there to serve, and there was really a patriotism and a love for the country.
Yeah. Just again, a question just regarding sort of being out in the field, because you sort of, I have this perception that you would have sort of field agents that go out and similar to yourself maybe, and try to cultivate informants and get on the ground and gain intel. And then what you would have is you'd have the analysts that would be more actually when the data comes back into the office, that they do all the analysis sort of thing. Is that about how it works sort of thing? And no, everybody in?
No, at the time, the analysts were people that basically got phone numbers for you. They ran phone numbers and ran background information. But we didn't have what they have today, where it's you hit the global desk and you can pull things out and put things. No, that's all. Back then, it was just you did the work, and they kind of they put together your report, and they did the tough work.
Wow.
Subpoenas and all that stuff.
Wow.
So when you're working on these cases, there must be one or two of those that have stuck with you throughout the years. I'd be interested to hear what a little bit about those, and also because you are obviously interested in human nature, what they taught you about human nature.
Yeah, well, I was amazed, when you would go out into the field, and it would always, what was nice is you would get a inquiry would come in, and then, this person is of interest, or we don't know if he's a bad guy or a good guy. And so, you have to find out who he is, identify him, and you have to go kind of backdoor on this person and run records and, check him out and talk to people. So that as I was talking to witnesses, all of a sudden I realized these people want to work with me. Some of them want to work with me. And they're interested to work for a variety of reasons. Some of them were really into this. Oh, I want to be like you. I want to be a secret squirrel. And we could, and that motivated them. Others were there for the money, just for the money. Or you had them over some barrel that they got, screwed up in some kind of federal violation and they had to pay it off. So, you get stuck with one of those. And then there was some wonderful, wonderful people that said, no money. I don't care. I love this country. I just moved to the country. I'm with my family. I love this country. And these are bad guys here. They're not the Muslims that we are. So, I would work with all of these folks. And so, that basically once you got that first informant or confidential source, it just led to others and others. So, when you ask me about cases, the one that I had mentioned earlier, where everything just came together, and it was just before the Gulf War, and I got a lead one Friday afternoon, and it was late in the afternoon, and I said, well, maybe I'll come back to this on Monday, but then I thought, you know what, I think we're going to war pretty soon, and I think I better check this lead out. On the way home, I'll drop by and check out these people. And I'll tell you, there was one of those just unbelievable things where I had just doing my job, and I just did I took off my shoes, and they're looking at me like, oh, you know what our culture is? I'm talking Arabic with them, and was sitting down having tea, and I don't know, it was like I was so calm and so comfortable with these people, but who they are and what they could provide was unbelievable. And so at the end of all this, and I'm sitting with them, and one guy is suspicious of me, and my gun is protruding out of my jacket, and he's looking at my gun. The other one is very cool, and he's fluent in English, and we're hitting it off. And I said, look, guys, you're new to the country. I said, if you love this country, if you want to stay in the country, help us out. And I said, I'm not going to force you. Thank you for the tea, but let's talk on Monday. And I have to know pretty soon, because you know what's going to happen. And they said, yes, we know what's happening. And I said, let's chat on Monday. And on Monday they said, we're all in. And it was just, so I played this part that ended up playing another part and in the end, after it was all over, we had the CIA and the military come back and said, your office shortened the war by 6 months.
Wow.
But by the work you guys did on the squad. So that was, I've always felt very, very good about it, very proud about that work. And it just was one of those things where, just knock on the door and you see what happens. The door opens and anything can happen. So that's probably the most unique case. And I think maybe the funniest case, because I love comedy, as you know, was a walk-in. We had a walk-in. In the book, I call him a businessman, but he wasn't a businessman. The FBI made me write that. So I'm breaking this to you guys for the first time. When you write a book, you've signed, you signed documents that if you publish a book, it has to go past them. They're pre-publication review unit, and there's a bunch of lawyers that go through it. And I figured some of it, this will sail right through. Wrong. And some of the stuff that I said, there's no way in hell they're going to let this stuff go. It went. It was like there was no rhyme or reason, right? So in this story, they made me. They said, "Well, no, you can't publish this. This is no." And I said, "Please, it's the whole book. It's everything rests on this one story." And they said, "Well, so they got back to me and they said, "Well, you can publish it, but you have to do this, this, and this." And he changed the name, changed the business, all of this, and I had to do it just to get that story out there. But it was interesting. This businessman, that's what it says in the book. Wink, wink. He comes in. He's a walk-in, and he's a professional. And he said, I think I can help. I think I can help the government. and I think I was the agent on duty, the duty agent, where you get all these people walking in or stuff. And so here he is, and he's a world-class professional. And so, excuse me a second. And he says, I go down to Cuba quite often, and in fact, they love me down there, and because of the work I do, and I know the rulers and, and all these people, and I could do things for you. I'm going down there. I'm going to be at this event in the Caribbean, and then I'm going to go to Havana, and I know these, and I can help you. And so I said, okay, well, let me think about it. So I went back to my supervisor, and he said, no, absolutely not. We're not opening this guy. We can't run any operations. This is Cuba. There's an economic embargo. Best thing we could do is just shake his hand, thank him, and if he sees anything down there, hears anything down there, all right, he can come back and just let us know. So off he goes. But before he goes, he calls up and he says, hey, Special Agent Strange, I just met this very nice Jewish man. He also does what I do, and we've become friends just in the last week. And I'm thinking, oh, Christ, this is Mossad. Here they are. The Israelis are in this now. And I said, have fun, ship of fools, go for it. So, off he goes. The next thing I know, maybe a week later, I get a call from the Coast Guard down in Key West. And they said, hey, I just talked to your friend. You got a good friend down here. I said, who's that? Oh, it's this guy. I said, no way. Hold on. That guy's not my friend. And, and he shouldn't have done that. There's an economic embargo. He should know better. And the guy said, oh, don't worry. We didn't arrest him because he's your friend. And no, I said, he's not my friend. And he goes, well, we didn't arrest him, but we did take away his rum, his Cuban rum. And then he caught this sailfish that was, like 500 pounds. We had to take that too. He's not too happy. Says, that's okay. I don't care. Do what you will. So I was a little pissed off that this guy did it, but like a week later, I get a package. It gets to the squad area. Special Agent Strange. I open this package, and it's one of these tapes, VHS tapes back then, right? So it's from this guy, and he said, "Have fun with my tape. Enjoy." And so I ended up going down a floor down and into this little room, and I put the thing in. I don't know what was it. Maybe it would have exploded or something. I don't know. But I was curious to see what it was. And the next thing it became hilarious. I mean, there he is. He's walking around, and he says, hey, everybody, I'm with Teofilo Stevenson, the Cuban boxer. Hey, Teofilo, I'm like, oh, man, that guy's for real. That is Stevenson. I like boxing. Yeah. I know what he was fantastic. That's him. And here I am at the Hemingway Museum, and this is the original Fisherman with Ernest Hemingway. He's almost ready to die, and this, say hi to everybody. It's just going around filming this stuff, and then it got better and better. The next sequence is underground tunnel under Havana. With military weapons. These are cannons, tanks, jeeps, and he's walking with this Israeli new friend that he has, and the and one of the Castro brothers, not to be confused with a law firm, right? This is the Castro. So he's with the younger brother, and the younger brother is taking him on a tour. But what's happening is, this tape, they know where this tape is going. They're not fools. This is Cuban intelligence. So they know it's going to go to me, and then I'm going to flash it around. It'll get down to Washington, and then. So it was a passive-aggressive, he was taking a passive-aggressive stance. We love the United States. Baseball is so good. But look, we have cannons and tanks, so please don't attack us. And we can defend ourselves. The Israeli guys making muscles over on the side. It's crazy stuff. It's just like I was laughing my ass off to see that. And then it got better. The next sequence. Now we're in the Fidel's room. We're in his office, and they're having a party, and there's like drinks and pieces of cake around, and they're celebrating, and everything is good, and here's to the world, here's to Cuba, here's to the United States, here's to Mossad. Well, not really, but they should have. Is what I believe. And so the next thing, and again, our guy is like he's a clown. I mean, he's like introducing, he's just like a puppet. And then finally, just as the tape is about to end, Raul Castro looks into the camera and says, "Agent Strange, are you getting all this?"
No way.
I'm like, whoa, my God, yes, every last word.
Jeez,
It was
man.
unbelievable. Oh man, as I took the tape and I showed it to my boss. He said, "Get rid of this tape. Send it to the CIA. Send it to the military. But just get it out of this goddamn office."
Wow.
So that's what we did. Oh my God. It's unbelievable.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
One of the, so I suppose that story sort of leads on to a question that I have. How hard is it to sort of separate the information from the disinformation? How hard is it to figure out, actually, is this guy genuine? Is he a double agent? Who is he working for? Because that must be incredibly difficult when you're on the ground. You've got so many moving parts and fluid parts,
right?
Just to understand the flow of information that's coming in. Actually, is it genuine, or are they trying to do it to make me think this, or to it is a game of chess. How hard is that?
Yeah, I mean, sure, it is. And you bring up an excellent point. It's a challenge. I mean, obviously, for all the reasons you mentioned, there were so many things spinning, so many of these plates spinning around. For me, it was easy. I didn't have to think too much. I didn't think too much. I just kind of intuitively, spend time with these people, get to know them, and figure them out. Let them talk. That 80-20 thing, and I was never really burned by anyone over my career. But yeah, I mean, it was a little worse with the foreign counterintelligence guys from the other squads with the Russians, and that was a different ball game. But with terrorism, these are kind of fiery Muslim people. They pretty much, say how they feel. Now the IRA was different. We met up with some IRA people. They much more closed, less likely to divulge information unless you had a hammer over them. But by and large, I did mostly Middle East terrorism, and so this group of people, what you saw, pretty much what you saw is what you got.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, that is incredible.
Yeah.
I can't even get my head around it, to be honest. Did you ever, when you were dealing with these people, because you're dealing with very, very dangerous people potentially, did you ever feel like your life could ever be threatened at any time?
Yes. There was one time where I got a little nervous. There's always this, during your career, there's always this arch enemy that you have, the good guy, and then there's this evil guy. And there was an evil guy. He's in the book. And this guy was a total fraud. He was, now this guy was a fraud. And what he was doing, I was introduced to him by another agent. And the agent said, "Oh, Mr. Mohammed, he is, look, you guys need to meet and talk. And he's been giving us information about the Iranian mullahs." And I'm thinking to myself, the more she talked and the more I saw him, I said, something is wrong with this picture. I mean, he's not Iranian. In fact, he's a Palestinian who was born in Iraq. And you could see the clouds of war with Iraq coming. So within a short period of time, I realized that he was feeding her, and she's collecting intel on Iran, but it was all misdirection. What he was really doing, and in the book, he was Saddam Hussein's errand boy in the New Jersey area, and he was a fraud. Oh, the guy! I mean, he was like, I can't say too much because I don't want him coming after me, but he was living the American dream. Let me put it like that. His English was near perfect, and he was, he was climbing the ladder, and he was a gentleman, and he would be, deferential to anyone that was higher than him. Oh, Mr. Ken, you are amazing. Just so much shit coming from this guy. And then we realized and this is where informants come in. And then I got a super informant who was on this guy.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, he's not what you think he is. When he goes over to Jordan, he's only halfway there.
Yeah.
You know where he's going. And, and so I was on to him, and I caught on, and I finally shook him up, trying to turn him. And I said, stop with the bullshit. I said, you're a fraud. I know what you're up to. And then he was just like, yeah, well, you got, in your face. All of a sudden, he wasn't that calm guy. He was like, yeah, well, you're going to have to take me down, that type of thing. So, it got personal, but I kind of cooled my jets. And then finally, he said, come to my apartment. I want to show you something. And so, of course, I told my partner, hey, if I don't come back, and he said, bro, if you don't hit me with the beeper at such and such a time, I'm coming to get you with the cavalry. Okay. Because he knew about this guy and what he represented. So I went over to the fellows. I was curious as to what he wanted to show me. And then we have tea and all the bullshit, the Middle East bullshit. And then he says, Mr. Ken, I want you to see what power really is. And he, again, the VHS tape, something with VHS tapes. he puts it in. No, it wasn't the Castro brothers that came up this time, but it was better than that. It was Saddam Hussein right there, and him with Saddam Hussein at the table. And he goes, look, Mr. Ken, this is me, and that is Saddam, and we hate America, we hate the Kuwaitis, and we have more. And then he started to he went manic. And I'm now I'm reaching for my gun. I have my hand on my gun because I'm starting to get nervous. He's starting to like froth and saliva's coming out, and it's like he's sexually excited or something, and it was very unnerving. And he said, "This is power, not Bush. Bush sucks. Saddam. I'm like, holy shit. So and finally I said, excuse me, I'm out of here. And I left, and I had my hand on my gun, and I was worried. Could he become jihadi on me? Could he go jihadi and like Kahani just shoot me in the head or something? I had to get out of there. So that was probably that was scary.
You mentioned there about you met a couple of people and you tried to turn them. Have you ever, and again, obviously without betraying any confidences, and I don't want anything to happen to you, obviously personally, have you ever feel like you've been approached to then turn and work for X, Y, or Z against the Americans as such? Has that ever happened to you?
No, it's never happened to me. No, nothing like that. But there was a interesting thing when I left the FBI and went to work for an overseas federal agency. I arrived in my duty station, which was Costa Rica. And within 2 or 3 months, I received a phone call from the FBI, from a unit chief in Washington, D.C. And he said, is this strange here? I said, yes, this is strange. Well, he says, well, I'm unit chief so-and-so, and we've been looking for you for a few months. And I said, oh, what have I done wrong? What's happened? And he said, no, congratulations. You've made the top 10 Hezbollah list. You're on a Hezbollah list, my friend.
Wow.
So we need to know exactly where you are and how you will protect yourself. And I said, well, and then he says, are you packing? Are you? And it didn't register. And I said, like, packing my clothes to leave? And he goes, no, packing a weapon. I said, no, we work overseas and we don't we're not authorized to carry overseas. So he said, well, you better tell your diplomatic security officer over in the embassy that, what has happened. And you're on this list with, but don't worry, you're in good company. He said there are 2 other Americans on this list. There's a CIA officer and there's another FBI agent out of New York. And we've gotten this from 2 separate but credible overseas agencies from friendly countries, apparently. Yeah. So, that was a kind of a spooky thing. And I said, can you tell me why am I on this list? I've never worked Hezbollah Matters. I worked Abu Nidal. I worked Islamic Jihad. I worked other Arab groups, Arab Liberation Front, which I actually uncovered the Arab Liberation Front. It's a tiny splinter group, but I found them. I I said, Jesus Christ, this is a tiny group, yeah. So this was I must have pissed off somebody in meeting so many Muslims and Arabs in the tri-state area. I must have come across Hezbollah contact, and they
Wow.
they didn't like what I was doing.
Wow, that I will say that's impressive, but it's probably the wrong word to use. But that's like notoriety, I suppose.
Well, I was always, after that, I was always looking over my back. I told the diplomatic security guy, Charlie Chase, I said, Charlie, he said, well, we'll do the best we can. We can have, stuff in your house and all of this and that. So, but nothing, thank God, nothing happened.
Wow. So when it came to time to hang up your badge, how difficult a decision was that for you?
Not hard, because at that time I was with, I was running my own office in Los Angeles with the Department of Justice. We have an Office of Inspector General, and we do a kind of internal affairs work. And it was kind of ironic because I started out as an FBI agent, and when I finished my career, we were investigating FBI agents because we had purview of all Department of Justice personnel and programs. So to be honest with you, I ran that office for about 7 years, and I hit 21 years, and a company in the private sector in Europe knocked on my door and said, "Hey, heard about you, and we're starting up a compliance investigations office in Latin America, and would you be interested?" And I'm kind of a gypsy, and I love traveling, and as you know, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to go through this door. I've got my 20 plus years in, and I've had a nice career, and let me try this. This might be a challenge for me. So it wasn't that hard to do, really, but sometimes, when you're sitting back these days and you're looking at what's happening on television, and you want to get back into the fight sometimes. Yeah. And then my wife says, sit down, sit down, you're getting old.
Yeah, probably sensible.
Yeah.
Taking you back, I suppose, one of the things that sort of struck a chord with me, really, but this is back in the day, sort of before 9/11, was the Oklahoma City bombings and stuff, and how hard hitting was that for maybe not you personally, but in terms of sort of the people that you associated with and your colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big thing for the Bureau, and everybody was looking at the overseas threat at the time, but here was so this was really homegrown threat, and it added another layer to the whole world of terrorism. It ended up being domestic terrorism as opposed to international, but I mean, it left a big impression on the Bureau. It was a seminal event. Of course, I was in Costa Rica when that happened with the other agency, but I called a few people over there, and as well. And just like 9/11, when 9/11 happened, I was actually conducting an investigation on some FBI agents, and as we got to the airport, we saw what was happening in New York was on the TVs and stuff, and I just couldn't believe it. And that became, and that that's my city, and I knew with this happening again, my office would be Newark, would be in there with New York, and so those seminal events, huge events.
Yeah, terrifying. It is terrifying, and it, people like yourselves who serve these careers, you find yourself on the Vic Ferrari podcast, and God bless him. He always sends them our way, and we really appreciate it because he's a good guy. He's a really good guy.
He's a really good guy. Yeah,
he's a great guy. He is a great guy. Like, he's written some fantastic books, quite numerous.
Yes, amazing. It's just amazing, and he, talk about a generous guy. I mean, that guy is reaching out to me, and he says, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about marketing it this way? Have you thought, you're actually taking time with me. And the other beautiful thing about Vic and cops like him, NYPD, it's like it's like a safe zone that I'm in with law enforcement. And these my dad was NYPD, so I knew that world. I grew up in that world. So here's that world coming back at me, and it's it gives you a good feeling, like I'm with good people, trustworthy people, people that serve the country, patriots.
Yeah, amen. And we're honored to be to be given a little peek into that world, aren't we? When,
absolutely.
When he sends guests our way, and when, on the numerous occasions that we have on our podcast, we really appreciate it. But it's almost like you found a second career, isn't it? When you do your authoring and you're writing books about it. Can you tell us about that process, about writing this book that we have here, A Cop's Son, and maybe some of the other works?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I have my first book, which ended up being self-published. It's a travel adventure spirituality book called "It's Your Camino," and it's about the Camino de Santiago de Compostela in Spain. But I've been writing since I was a kid, since I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I guess I'm a little bit different. I think. Whenever I would do something as a kid, I saw the whole world as sort of a story. I would even go into school or in the playground. I'd make these stories, and then I'd go home and say, "This is what happened to me and to my parents." But I found a home in the library and a nearby library, and this library was kind of my escape from the neighborhood. It was a lower middle class neighborhood, row houses, attached row houses, small little places. Not that we didn't love it, we didn't know any better, but for me, it was just, it was the same old. So I'd go to the library and I'd get involved in Ray Bradbury books and Jack London and read all these wonderful books. And I said, man, I want to write. I want to write like these people. And so I started writing. Science fiction. And my father, who was a very different cop, a very different person, he would look at my stuff and he says, "Son, that's very good, but you know what? Have you thought about this? And here's another book you should read," which kind of and he just kept feeding me books. And then he was also, while this was going on, he's also studying Spanish. He's a cop. He's studying Spanish. I stumble in on him and he's in the basement listening to these 33 LP records. And he's saying, "Arturo, Isabel, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Son, join me, learn Spanish." And so he turned me on to Spanish. So Spanish, writing, and then I started off with I went to Madrid, junior year abroad. I majored in Spanish, so it was just obvious that I was heading in that direction. But always writing. Whenever I could write, and then I would send things to local newspapers and town newspapers. So I always had this love of writing. And I suppose you're also writing when you're doing your work with the FBI, with the Department of Justice. You're just writing reports, right? It's a little different. But, whenever I could. And then finally, when the careers were over and the kids were out, I thought, it's time. It's like now or never. Let's do this. So the Camino was the first one. And Martin Sheen, the actor, was very helpful in encouraging us to go. And then later, encouraging me to write the book. So that was the first book. And then the second book was just, somebody asked me in a security company, he said, what kind of work did you do? It must have been fascinating. And I said, well, I don't know if it's fascinating, but I'll tell you a story. And the guy said, whoa, dude, you better put that in paper. And I finally said, you know what, I probably should put it on paper. And I'm going to put my dad in this book since, he kind of, he was a huge influence on me. So I said, Dad needs a special chapter because, 38 years. If I saw stuff, imagine what he saw in 38 years.
Yeah.
So that's how. So and I got a few awards, and I've never won anything in my life. So I said, maybe I should continue. This is kind of fun. I enjoy doing this.
Yeah. Well, you obviously do it very well. So why would you not continue?
Yeah, why not?
Hey, man. Yeah. So, just for our listeners out there, did you want to tell them where they can pick up your book, just out of interest?
Well, yeah. Thank you, Beans and Gas. You could pick up these. Well, the Camino book is on Amazon. You can pick it up on Amazon. A Cop's Son is also on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Nobles, and it's published by Post Hill Press. So you can pick it up there. And then I have a blog site, which is Kenneth Strange, one word, KennethStrange.com. And by the way, Strange is an English name.
Yeah, we had this conversation. Go on, tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Because one of the
Yeah, no,
things I just wanted- before we let you go, you mentioned there, that
Yeah,
you were
thank
very
you.
well traveled, and I wanted to get to that a little bit. So, Tallboy Radio is listened to in 82 countries. In terms of where you visited, you're not too far behind that number, are you?
No, I think I'm closing in on 70. But
Wow. No. Wow. That is impressive.
yeah, but my wife wants to put an end to it.
Don't they all?
and an end to my career also. Just joking, kind of. Yeah. So I mean, what's fascinating about this is, the story I always heard from my great aunts and grandparents was this fellow Charles Barter Strange. He was an orphan. He was actually an orphan in London. And he came to the United States, I think it was in 1888 or so, with his children. So interesting guy. He was a tutor, and when he came to the United States, he did a little bit of teaching, and he worked for ICE, but not the ICE you're hearing about here. He was like an ICE man, I guess. They were selling ICE when he came to New York. But an interesting person. I heard a lot of stories about him. And then, and kind of sad when I went to the Surrey, they have the records, I think, in Surrey, and they actually had the printout of the orphanage book, and you see them like in, I don't know, 1850 something, and it says, bastard child, age 12, no parents, abandoned, and you look at it and say, wow, it kind of hurt to see it. And I felt sad for that. Would have been the child back then, turning up in this orphanage. Apparently it was on Streatham Hill, and the orphanage has been razed it's been gone for many years, but the church where he sang in the choir, still there. I went to the church, checked it out, and I just thought, wow, what an adventure. You left Britain, with your wife and kids, an adventure to come to New York. The wife hated America, from what I heard. She was from Wallingford, and apparently from a nice family, and she was very homesick, from what I heard. And then, but he continued, married another British after his wife died, another British woman from St. Thomas down in the West Indies, who had moved to Brooklyn, and so that's how the family started moving.
Wow,
That's incredible.
incredible story. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, incredible story.
And
Interesting.
just recently, you've paid a visit to Haugesund in Norway, which I was in August, bizarrely. And that again was tracing your family tree there, wasn't it?
It was unbelievable, and it came down to the last day of our stay in Haugesund when, just by showing up at a church, St. Olaf's Church, on All Souls Day, and I didn't realize there was a service. And the doors open, and there was this reverend, and I spoke to him, and I told him who we were, and he said, "Why don't you go to the service with us? It's a Lutheran church. Come to the service, and afterwards there's a reception, and you can ask about your family here." And that made all the difference in the world, because there was one person out of like 50, 60 people that came up to me and said, "I'm a Norwegian. I was actually born in the United States, but I came back to live here when I was like 12. And I know your family. I know where their land is, and I'm going to talk to a historian and see what I can do." And like the next day, I get this call. It's our last day at the hotel. Get the call, and he says, "You better hurry. I'm here with your third cousin. She's dying to meet you."
Wow.
Man,
Yeah.
that was so emotional. To get there, I was like, I can't even explain the feeling. It was beautiful. It was really nice to hug this person and say, "This is your DNA," and it's been 140 years since any of us we waved goodbye, and we've reconnected. It was really joyful.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. I've done a little bit with my family tree, and when I reunited with with a lost leg of it, it's phenomenal. It really is.
It is, isn't it?
It's
It's
special.
just-
It really is.
It's special. It's special. Moving, quite moving.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. But before we let you go, have you got any questions for Kenneth Gaza?
I've probably got a million questions if I'm honest. But yeah, look, you know, we normally wrap these things up around about an hour, a little bit over, but not too far over. And it's strange because for many guests, I'm fascinated by the guests that we have on, and I will say to many guests, I can't wait till the next time, because I've still got hundreds of questions. We can't fit it in, unfortunately, on this one. But Kenneth, I mean, you know, if you are, you know, if you're willing and able, you know, we would love to have you back on at some point and just explore again. You know, just some of the questions that perhaps for me are sort of left unasked. And again, just to dig into a little bit, you know, I've got so many thoughts and different things that I want to go to. So, you know, I personally, and obviously from TBR, we would love to have you on again if you're able and willing at some point.
I would love to come back, and I'll tell you this much: this session with you both is very special, and I mean that sincerely. You have a nice way of interviewing, and I just feel very comfortable with you. It's almost like we're friends. It's like from a long time. It's nice. Thank you so much, both of you.
Oh no, thank you. You know, we here on Tallboy Radio, we started it because we like to sit down and have a beer together.
I would love to have a beer with you guys.
Well, next time you're over, you hit us up, and we're.
I hope my wife didn't hear that.
No, hey, well, bring her along. It's fine. You're more than merrier.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, our premise is very much. It's quite conversational. It's very relaxed. You know, we absolutely would love our guests to sort of talk. And as you said, the 80-20. You know, we want to listen to you. Our listeners don't want to listen to us. We've been there. We've done that. they want to listen to our guests. And you know, so you know, if you are able and willing, you know, absolutely, we'd love to have you on again. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
Love to. Thank you.
From the UK, come and sit down with us, and we'll
absolutely. Amen to that.
We'll
yeah,
supply the beer, no problem.
I may take you up on that.
You will regret it, but nonetheless.
Okay. Oh well.
No.
Yeah.
That leaves it for us then to wrap up the episode and to say thank you to Kenneth. Honestly, really enjoyed it. For those who are listening to this, I hope we do go out there and pick up a copy of the book. You can do so on Amazon. You can, like Kenneth says, visit kennethstrange.com. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. Click on the link, take a look at what he does. And like I say, if you can pick up one of his books, that would be absolutely fantastic. Because I can tell you, it's a very good read. And we've given you a little sample of that tonight. And we'll give you a sample of it the next time he's back on the podcast. So just leave it to me to say thank you and good night.
Good night. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Friends around the mic, kicking back. All right. Day turns into night, podcast in the spotlight.